Hello, folks. This is Matthew HU, and welcome to our final episode of our FineReport training section on the topic of parameters, chart, and decision-making platform. So in the previous section, we actually have been covered various topics ranging from general report, data entry report, and the dashboard by using FRM and FVS. So these topics pretty much can cover all the key functionality of FineReport, and we have even created a demo showcasing specific function. However, today's topic are slightly different. Unlike the functions from previous section, you can't really do the exactly same thing with today's content. Today's content is more like a little mix about like a little bit. Today's content is more of like mix of various topics with a little bit of this, a little bit of that. To be honest, today's content can be confusing sometimes. Therefore, today's section is aiming to build some common knowledge for you about these topics. So first thing first, agenda. So today's topic, we're going to cover parameters, chart, and decision-making platform, as you can see over there. So in my previous pre-run, each topics approximately take like 10 to 20-ish minutes, which means this entire section will take like an hour or so. And we actually not gonna have water break in the between. And we're actually gonna spend more time on the Q&A section at the very end. And I do understand sometimes people just feel shy or just don't really have the question at the moment. That's fine. But I do want to encourage you to think and participate. In order to do so, I actually prepared 3 questions during the training. And hopefully this kind of question can give you guys opportunity to think and participate. On top of that, I also prepared a PowerPoint for today's section. To be honest, I'm not like PowerPoint person, but I think like PowerPoint, it's easier for you guys to refresh the memory later on. And also it's more structured. You guys actually can see how this content has been delivered. And one thing I would like to share with you is that I actually put the documentation link over there. So regarding to different slides, you guys actually can refer on that for later on for refresh the memory or whatever. All right, so I guess that would be everything about introduction and agenda, and I think we can just get started. So let's move on to today's first topic, parameters. So definition. So basically, like for example, in computer science, parameters is something that you take as the input for a function. Based on the language, they got different type of parameters. Let's say in Java, you have a string, Boolean, integer, array, right? And also based on different scope level, they have things called local variable and global variable. Since FineReport is written in Java, this concept and also get inherited and get copied in the FineReport itself. So in this slide, you can see we divided the parameters into 4 different types of 4 different types, as you can see in the slide, based on the scope level. And I'll also list where can you find it. This is the type, and so where can you find it, right? So we're gonna go through this one by one and kind of give you guys like overview about what parameters are in the FineReport. So first thing is called template parameters. I'm just gonna remove these, okay? So basically template parameters, I think many of you already know, but since we do got some newcomers today, I think it would be kind of like nice to give you guys at least overview about what it is. So this is the general report that I just create. I mean, this is actually from our very first section. So basically, where can you find template parameters? You can actually find it in here. Under the template, there's a things called template parameters. After you click it, you actually can see this UI allows you actually create the different parameters that's actually you can use in this template. The reason why this template parameters is really important, that's how do you make this report dynamic. For example, you can use template parameters in this parameter control panel by clicking, let's say if I do the East China, right? You see this chart has been changed accordingly. The reason why is because this TP region template parameters has been used in this data source. So I guess, so at this point, I guess you can tell the reasoning why this template parameters is so important is you actually can use template parameters to do the filtering a lot and also to make your chart dynamic. I mean, the whole point for using this is how do you, is like in this report, you want to show as much as information you have by having these kind of like a variable parameters that you can take for this template. You actually can make your report showing lots of more information based on the query that's you were running, right? That's pretty much what it is. And also, so my point in here is that you actually can use temporary parameters in this control panel. It's called parameter control panel. And also you can use template parameters in this data source query. So by changing the data source query over there, you actually can, filtering out what kind of data you want to display on the screen. So that's pretty much what you can do. And something else I would like to share is that in the general report, if you double click this cell, right, you actually see this filtering option, like filtering option, right? If you click it, oops, you actually can set these with certain value that you wanted, right? So that's another way to use template parameters directly. I mean, I would say this is a good to know, but it really depends on what kind of report you're generating. For example, if you done this filtering section, like filtering process in the data like source section, compared to what you were doing in there, the performance in here will be much better than what you did in here, because this was all done by SQL if you're using like relational database, right? But in here, it's kind of like you are done in Java in coding level. So I guess many of people actually know this function, but it just, it's not good idea just knowing this only. You kind of need to know this, you can use template parameters in over there as well. So I think that would be something that's you need to know about the template parameters and where to use it. So basically you use template parameters for the filtering function, and you need to consider the performance, later on, depending on what kind of report you were making. So that's pretty much the template parameters. And another things we have is called global parameters. So under the server, there's a things called global parameters. So I guess from the name, it's pretty straightforward, saying that's like, template parameters is only works in the template. Global parameters, it works among the templates as long as, in the same server. So for example, I download FineReport on my local machine, which means as long as I create these local parameters on my server or local machine, I actually can use these parameters everywhere else as long as, it's on the local environment, right? So that would be something that's, I guess, how to distinguish the differences between global parameters and template parameters. Both are both parameters to make your report dynamic, but based on different level of scope. One's can use for the template, one's for the using amount of template. So that's something that you need to know. And also something else I would like to point out is that when you create these template parameters, you notice you actually can set a type, right? Remember we were talking about FineReport was written in Java. So you actually can see this similar type, like data type or parameter type or variable type in there, right? String, integer, double or float or Boolean, right? And so two things I like to know is one's called date and one's called formula. So date is something that's it's commonly used in the reporting tool or data visualization tool. So you kind of need to data exist. And also there's a formula, right? Formula is something that's like small function. You can return something like Boolean value or like string, whatever, like numbers, right? That's something that's you need to know. Similarly, for the server global parameters, you got exactly the same setup. So you kind of like see the similarity between Java and FineReport, right? The logic is kind of like the same. So I think that will be our slide number 3 and number 4. I would like to also point out next things. It's called template dataset parameters. So template dataset parameters, where can you find it? I also list where you can find it, right? And this is the documentation you can use to, refresh the memory or, get more details about it, right? So go to the designer. So basically, dataset template dataset parameters is something like this. So the bottom line is that but the reason why you need to have this dataset template dataset parameters is to avoid repeat input the value when you do the query. So for example, if I click the preview, right, you see this value has been automatically added in here because I do have the value in here in the first place. So what you can do is you actually just can click the OK, and you see the query will be running, right? But if you don't have these, let's say if I cut it, click a preview, you see this value has been gone, right? You can manually put it, or you can just copy paste it, right? But that's, the bottom line, that's why I was talking about like the bottom line for using these is that you use these to avoid those kind of like duplications by putting the value to test your query. That's, that's the reasoning behind it. And another things we have over there is called server dataset. So in the slide, that's where you can find it, right? And this is the documentation for it. So under the server, you actually can see the server dataset setup panel. So I would say, like personally, I didn't like I never have a chance that's create a report in a team, right? So I guess server dataset didn't really help me a lot just because I kind of like doing report, like creating report by myself. But I think that would be really good news for people who do not know SQL very well. You actually can rely on your teammate to write this SQL for you, especially if this SQL has been frequently used among the report. You actually can during the team discussion, you kind of can see how this team works, right? So I guess that would be something that you can do. And something else I think is worth to mention is that you actually not only allow DB query, you actually can do something called embedded database. So you actually can design the table and insert a value for it, right? So remember, this value has been in the server level, right? And it's not in the database. So I guess that would be something that's interesting to know. But I would say it really depends, why you need to use it, because it's not really save the data anywhere else. It just save this data with the FineReport itself, right? Okay, that would be something that you should know. So before we move on, I think we have 2 more things to cover. One's called system parameters. So by clicking the designer, where can you find these system parameters is in this insert formula. So let me highlight a little bit for the newcomers. So this function icon. So insert formula, you actually can see this bunch of variable has been appeared. I would say that's something that you need to know, this kind of variable exists, but it's not something that you will use quite often. It depends on what kind of job you were doing. But basically these kind of variables are relatively difficult to get for the regular users, but it's something that's, I guess, they can do very cool things. For example, you actually can get a value for total page number, or find position, or like all these different like server name, like server port number, stuff like that, right? I guess that would be something that you need to know, just in case you don't know these things exist in the first place. And another things I want to introduce to you is not really to the relate to the parameters, but it's something that's we have in our project. It's called FineDB. It's in here. I also put where these files located. So basically, FineDB has the information about like authority control, platform operation, system management, right? So let me go to the browser, check it for you. So as you can see, if you go to the documentation, you kind of can see what kind of table in there and what's the name of this the meaning of, what's the information inside, right? So the reason why I want to introduce this FineDB to you is it's not like I want you to change it, but I want to share this information with you is because many of our clients doesn't even know this like FineDB exists in the first place. For example, there's sometimes that you need to change the value for it. Is that, for example, if you want to build a data connection with a data engine, right? You do need to allow the driver installed in the FineReport. In that case, you do need to change the value in the FineDB. But beside that, the chance for you to modify the FineDB is relatively low. So I would say do not change any value in the FineDB unless you know what you're doing. But keep that in mind. FineDB exists, right? That's something that you need to know. All right. So I guess came up with our first question. So my first question is, what if there's overlap between the global parameters and the template parameters? So when I say overlap, I guess the name will be the same, but the value will be the different, right? But in the report, what's gonna happen? What's the value, behind, like if there's a overlap between these two parameters? So I would like to give you guys like maybe 10 to 15 seconds to think, and we'll test it or answer this question later. So let's see what we can do. So go to the designer. Let me create a template parameters called parameter2 and called local parameters. At the same time, go to the global parameters, and there's things called parameter2 called global parameters. So in here, I will insert the formula. As you can see, this is a template parameters, right? And in here, I will do the exactly same. So the first one is the template parameters, and second is the global parameters. The name is the same, as you can see, but the value is different, right? So when I click the preview, I will see what's gonna happen after. So in here, as you can see, it's a local parameters. So if you know Java, I guess it will be much easier to explain. So basically, remember we have like different level of parameters, right? Or you can call it variables. You can say this is one is a local variable, one is global variables. When you initialize it, the global variable, all global variable always initialize outside of the function. In our case, it's well initialized outside of this template. But when we go to inside of this template, the local variable will be start to initialize, right? That's why there's the value from local variable has been replaced to the global variable. That's why these local parameters has been showed up instead. I guess in the reality, no one's gonna ask you a question about this, but it just kind of like give you a way to think, oh, you know, what's gonna happen if there's a overlap between, right? So I guess that would be, you know, some practice for us. And the next question we have over there, it's what's the differences between the template parameters and data set parameters? And the same style, 10 seconds, and we'll get back later. So for this question, we're actually not going to answer right away, because in our demo, I actually have a perfect example to show, you know, what's the differences between the template parameters and data set parameters in terms of displaying the value. And I think that would be something that you guys can think, you know, during the section and the process, like, you know, what's actually going to happen. But again, the bottom line, like why you need to use template parameters and data set parameters, that's is something that's we already covered. Template parameters, you do need to use it for the filtering function, right? And you can make your chart dynamic. But data set parameters, it's for you to test your query. That's basically what they do. And let's move on to the second topic for today, chart. So actually chart has like lots of content, and I don't really I don't really see the point that's you making chart with you guys like step by step, because in our previous section we actually already demonstrated what it is and how to use it, and which chart you need to choose depends on what kind of data you were using, or the function or the features of your data, or what kind of function, what kind of presentation you want to do. So I would just like assume you guys know a lot about chart, but I would like to cover something that's about chart that's we didn't really get a chance to cover. For example, the documentation part. So from our documentation, you actually can see what kind of chart will exist. I mean, what kind of chart FineReport provide, and also you can find cross-bounding documentation in our like from our official site, right? Beside that, I think that would be really helpful. Beside that, something else is in the designer, these things is already being covered. So you actually can see this example about different type of chart in your FineReport directory, right? You actually can see this map or line chart, heat map, you know, all these things has been pre-installed on your environment. You actually can use these after you figure like what kind of chart to use. You actually can refer on the example over there. So that would be something that's I think, you know, nice to know. And another thing is about the chart logic. So that's something that's I would like, that's the, you know, bullet point that I plan to cover. So let's create a designer. I mean, let's go to the designer, general report. So you got two ways to insert a chart. In the general report, one of way is to adding the floating elements, as you can see over there. You actually can, you know, insert chart in this way. Another way you can do is based on the cell, right? So for example, you make this cell big enough and you can insert cell elements, and you also can do chart in this way as well. So I guess, you know, the pros and cons for these two is pretty straightforward. But what I want to talk about is that after you click the cell, right, or the chart component itself, you see these tabs. Each one of those pretty much contain like, you know, specific things you can do with this chart. And for example, the type is straightforward. It's just, you know, doing something with the type, right? What kind of chart you can do. That's something that's we're actually going to cover in next section. I wouldn't say next section, like later on, but data is something that's you can connect to the data source, right? So if I click this, you see you need to choose what kind of data source you're going to do, right? And the style is about the UI itself. Anything about like, how this chart will look like will stuck on this section. And the special effect is something to do with interaction. For example, remember in our previous section, we were talking about the parameters, right? How to make this chart dynamic. That's where you can, implement this with a chart. You need to pass in the parameters between. That's something that's you need to know. And then I think you can find this pretty well from the documentation. But it depends on what kind of report you were using. The style is different, right? So for example, for general report, you got like these cell elements, or you can do this with a floating elements. But if you create a dashboard, I guess I have an example in here already from previous section. You actually got different type of layouts, right? You got things called adaptive layout and absolute layout. So absolute layout, you kind of like just put chart inside of this component and allows you to do the overlap in there. But adaptive layout doesn't allow you to do so. So if I click the preview about adaptive layout, that's what you can see, right? Each component takes the same amount of space and cannot cross each other. But for the absolute layout, that's something that you can see this overlap between, right? If you want to get more information about this, it's something that we already covered from previous section. I guess you can refer on that. But I think in our section, we're actually going to cover something that we didn't cover, which will be about the chart type. So speaking of a chart type, there's two types of chart I want to introduce to you. One is called combination chart. One is called switching between the chart. So basically, combination chart is a powerful tool, but like a powerful chart in FineReport offer a powerful way to visualize and analyze the data from multiple perspectives simultaneously. So the advantage for using these, I would say, allow the data comparison by allowing multiple data series to display on the single chart. This comparison between the data can highlight the pattern and the relationship. And also this kind of a chart is more engaging and informative. One common combination chart people use in the FineReport is this line chart with the column chart. So I have, let's say, this is the combination chart, right? You see this line chart and the column chart. This is like something that's what we're talking about, right? You see the pattern, you see the relationship. And as you can see, if I click the data, you'll see the data source can be, separated, right? So that's what FineReport can do. And another type of a chart I would like to introduce to you is called switching between the chart. So basically, switching between chart is by clicking this plus sign in here. So basically, if I click this, right, you see more component has been added, right? So switching between chart basically just saying that, in the same amount, in this fixed space, this chart will display like one by one, like frequent, like, yeah. So one thing I like to point out is this button in here, it's like setting, like this, setting icon. If you click it, you actually can set time interval. It's like, oh, how long each chart will be displayed, right? So like switching from first chart to second chart, and keep doing this. So you can do 10 seconds or 5 seconds, depends on what you want, right? You also can change the name, stuff like that. So people might gonna ask, oh, Matthew, why you want to introduce this, like, switching between the chart, to us, right? Why this is important? So the reason why I want to introduce the chart to you is because, some data can be displayed in one way, but because by using one way, kind of, set a limitation about, like, the message these data can be delivered. For example, the reason why most people using switching between the chart is because they want to use different type of chart to display the same data. However, for the combination chart, it's slightly different. It's like data the same, but data source is not the same because you want to show the pattern, the relationship. But switching between chart is something that's you only focus on one data. It just display in different ways. And so in our demo, like over sales performance, I actually used it in here. And I also has been demonstrated why we cannot use the combination chart in here. So I guess that would be something that we can see later on. But I guess as long as you guys notice, combination chart is to display different data source, and the switching between chart is to display same data. That would be good, but that would be really depends on the implementation or about the presentation you want to do. It's not like guarantee you need to follow the rule, but it's something that's I think most of our clients do. Another thing that we have is a primary passing. So by open the example that we had in the designer, let me open a different one. Let me open the dashboard from the dashboard section. So FRM. So primary passing, remember in the previous section, we were talking about like, oh, if you're clicking some value, but then the template parameters, usually the value of the template parameters will change, right? So if I double click this, you see this hyperlink. The value has been changed for this time. Template parameters will be changed based on whatever you click, right? So that's how this parameter passing logic has been implemented in the FineReport. And the same thing has been implemented in this general report. Well, since I already changed it, right? Let me click this, say no, go there. Well, apparently this one doesn't have it. Well, this one do. So as you can see, I click the floating elements, right? And on the special effect, that's where we're talking about the interaction, right? How do you make this chart dynamic? You actually can see this hyperlink or dynamic parameters one has been involved, right? If I clicking this, you will see no matter what I click, the value for this TP region, which has been generated in this template, will be changed whatever you click, right? That's how do you make this chart dynamic. Just to refresh your memory, if I click the preview, you see this chart has been displayed the information about East China and North China, right? But if I click on one of those, you see this chart will only gonna display this North China information, right? The reason why you see these things because I actually moving the floating elements a little bit above. That's why. But yeah, I hope don't get surprised. Okay. So next things about the map. So map will be something that's for depends on what kind of industry you are in. But map is something that's most of our clients do not gonna use. But if you use it, many clients actually had really a difficult time to figure out how this map works. So I would just kind of give you guys about quick introduction about the map to kind of build this common knowledge about the how to use a map in the FineReport. So in the FineReport, we actually have two different types of map. One is called point map, one is called area map. So if I click this, choose the map under the type, right? You will see we have two different type of map. One's here, one's here. One's area map, one's called point map, and this is called, I think, called like a flow map, and this is called a combination map. But the point is, the very basic map is just these two type map. And the floating map, flow map, it just like has a value between different points. And this is called point map, and this is called area map, and this is combination map, right? So you just need to focus these two for now, right? These two. So the reason why you need to know these two maps is important, because how this map logic works is that for these three sections is exactly the same as another chart in the FineReport, but for the type, you kind of need to have this like JS like layer, like map boundary before you having the value. So let's take a look about these, two different type of map, right? Or just one of those. So there's a thing called GeoJSON file in the FineReport. So if I go to slides, you see this GeoJSON file path. So they actually were looking for this GeoJSON file, right? So if you go to the FineReport, web apps, web roots, web init, and there's things called assets. And there's things called map. So that's okay, like in here. So in here you see this word file, right? And you see this word area JSON, and you see this word point JSON. If I open this with Sublime, you'll see like a bunch of coordinates, like longitude, latitude, and name of the pop, like the country, right? So basically, by having this file exist in the FineReport, actually allows FineReport to distinguish like what kind of a map layer or like what kind of map boundary you want to have. So if I go to the designer, you see this word exists, right? Because I have these two files, world point and world map, right? But if I go in deep a little bit, you actually can see another three folders, right? China, and there's China province, and there's the East Asia, right? So you kind of see this file has been installed, right? So if I go to the designer, you see this China, right? You see this China province, and you see South Asia, right? In there. So as you can see, after I change the map boundary, you see this, the view has been changed, right? It changed, became all East Asia, like South Asia instead. If I do this with China, you will see the view of China. Okay. So one of the questions we have been commonly asked is that why the country that I was looking for doesn't exist, right? So I guess that's something that's I will answer right now. So you notice FineReport will understand this world JSON file by having these two files, right? Okay, let me show the by having these two files, right? However, this map or this JSON file can be extremely huge, right? It's possible to have all the points, all the longitude, latitude about like every city, every country in the world in this one file, right? So for example, if I go to this area GeoJSON file, if I'm looking for, let's say, if I'm looking for Canada, right? You notice Canada exists, which means this file has information about Canada. But if I'm looking for like a place like Korea, right? You see South Korea was exists, right? But if I find a place like Singapore, let's say, you notice there's no information, but you can find information about Indonesia, right? The reason for this is just saying that like, the map is not perfect. The map doesn't have the information about Singapore, but it doesn't mean this Singapore doesn't exist in the world, right? So I guess what you can do is you either can, talk to our tech support to ask, what's the, solution that we can offer. We actually can offer a plugin to fix these, but it's really dependent on the clients, right? But another thing is you can do is you actually need to find this GeoJSON file by yourself. That's why I introduced, FineReport. We have two different type of GeoJSON file. One is point, one is area, right? As long as you find this information you will understand, why this layer has been showed up like this, right? And then another things I want to show is about the data itself, because it can be confusing sometimes. So for example, if I change this as a world level, right? I think it'll be easier because you know what? I think I'll stay in China because I think I think it would be a good demonstration for Korea. I don't know. Let's see. So this is the world for now. If I click the data, right, you actually can set a data source over there. For example, if I click this add embedded data, right? If I add this cost city or country, have a value. Insert row. So country will be, I don't know, Canada 1, and insert another country like Korea, or South Korea, 82. I think that's the number into die before their local number, right? So what we're gonna do is I choose the map type, right? And I choose this map boundary as world and this GIS layer. I think for our international clients, you're just always gonna choose this mailbox API instead, because the standard actually was have some Chinese character in there, which is not something you want to see. So click data and then embedded data, country, and insert the value, right? So what I did is I actually put the information in this embedded database with South Korea and South Korea and Canada, and I have the value behind it, right? And the reason why you see this is that I actually click these buttons. I think many of you definitely will do this if you're working on the map, because you see this auto matched, right? So they were saying that, oh, you put South Korea, right? We find out there's exactly the same thing called South Korea, and we matched it. If there's things called Canada, we match the Canada. So if I click this, click the preview. Yeah, the reason why this map is too small and I shouldn't do it in there, but it's okay. Let me make this. Let's copy this, click the sheets number 2. Oh. Delete it all. Let's put it back. Where is map? Okay. So I'll put a map in here and make a little bit bigger to see. Well, I guess it's okay to see, but it's not perfect to see, right? Let's see. I mean, one thing I can do is that I actually can remove the template that I had, but I think I want to save that for you guys later to send it. So what I'm going to do is actually create a new general report. Okay, you know what? I was just going to redo it. So insert floating elements. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna redo it because the floating element seems not that's working very well with the copy paste. So this is the map. If I click this world, that's good. And then go for this point map, and data set will be embedded. And if I click this, apparently has no information. Country, refresh. Yep, looks okay. And then add a value for it. Click save. Apparently I pasted somewhere, it just doesn't really show up, but let's take on this one. So as you can see, this Canada has the value with 1, right? And South Korea is what there with 82, right? So that's how do you combine the map boundary and the value itself. But something else I would like to show is commonly happen is that, let's say if I have different somewhere else, let's say if I call Wonderland, right? Apparently this Wonderland doesn't exist, right? I want to show you what FineReport will do. So notice Wonderland, I mean, the country called Wonderland doesn't exist, right? The value not going to match to anywhere else. I want to click what I'm going to do. So if I click save preview, nothing going to happen because there's no like value has been matched up, right? But if I click here, you notice important things, this setup button, you notice these things has been not matched up, right? So what I can do in here is I can do it manually by matching two different, category in this GeoJSON file, right? I can match to, I don't know, could be like Japan or India, Russia, Mongolia, right? Kazakhstan or anywhere else. Let's say if I do a Japan, so you see this customer matched list has been appeared, right? So that would be something that's, very challenging for people who are using the map in the first place. All right. So besides that, if I click OK, what you can see is that you actually can see Japan also will have value in here. Yes. You see Japan has the value for, I think, 23 or something. Wait, this is the North China. Well, North Korea, see this. Well, the reason why, you see Japan's over there. Apparently, this GeoJSON file actually can mess people a lot because apparently you see like North Korea and South Korea both has been pointed out, right, in the GeoJSON file. I think that would be something that I think you need to really care about. And I think our, like this section actually can answer the question why, this map has been showed up in this way. But again, most of our clients don't really stick on the map just because map it's a really huge project. It's a really huge, chart you need to generate, right? So yeah, depend on people, I would say. Depend on people, depend on the company, depend on the project itself. So that's everything we have. And we have a question. Yes. So the question we have in here is how do you remove these 3 dots icon on the top right corner, like the one in here. So let me open the designer. So the question I have in there is like, how do you remove these 3 dots over here, right? I will give you guys like 10 seconds again and get back later. All right, so I guess the first thing you need to understand, like you notice when you click this map, it's there have some interaction between, right? So apparently you need to do something double click these with this special effect, right? That's something that you need to do. Sorry, let me highlight special effect. The reason why, because when we're moving the mouse over, you see some interaction can be involved, right? So gonna be here. But if something about the UI, because many clients actually think, oh, you know what, is how this chart looks like, right? I will go find some setting in the style, but no, that's not how do you do it. So I guess after you knowing this, it's okay. So by clicking these things, these 3 dots has been disappeared, right? If you click one of those, you see these 3 dots has been appeared. So if I click preview, after uncheck this check mark, right? I mean, checkbox. You see these 3 dots has been removed. So the reason why this question are there is that I want to tell you, you need to know which part, which tag is to work on which section, and actually going to help you to understand the chart, the logic. So I guess that would be everything I have about the chart. Let me look at the cheat sheet. Yes, looks okay. So next part, decision-making platform. So I actually forgot to bring this up, but I noticed many of today's audience are newcomers. I want to introduce in the FineReport, we actually have 2 different types of users. One is called admin users, one is called like regular users. So regular users is like people who are actually making report and who can access the report. But the admin users, or it's someone who actually have the system control or platform control or setting or, authority, people who actually can do these. So since decision-making platform is most likely about the admin account, but if you have take a look about the documentation over there, you can pretty much follow this very well, I would say. But there are 2 things I want to show for you guys today. The most important thing is about task scheduler or task scheduling, time scheduling. So basically what this can do, let's say there's a report that you want to send to the entire team, let's say 5 o'clock in the morning every single day, because that's where the data get ready, right? Ideally, you want to have someone who do it for you because you want to check the report and then you want to send it to people. But what FineReport can do is that by using this function, you actually can ask FineReport to set a certain condition and do this in a certain time and send it. So that's something that's regular users even gonna access a lot. And another things I want to introduce is a plugin and a log. The reason why plugin is important because for some customized functionality, you do need to know how plugin exists. And another things I want to talk about the log is about if you talk to our tech support, that's pretty much the first file they're going to ask you if you guys encounter some difficult issues, right? But for these 2, I think we're just going to kind of show you where are they, because documentation over there will definitely be more details and be more useful, because you need to know what you want to do first, right? Instead of just looking around, not going to help, I would say. So open the designer, you actually can access the decision-making platform by clicking the server, and there's things called platform management. Let's do it first. Server platform management. So after there, you can set admin accounts, login. So that's decision-making platform, right? So I was using admin account. That's why I see this directory management. And under the management, they have a bunch of icon you can click, right? Directory, I think it's self-explanatory, just kind of manage the directory over there. Users, you can actually have different users in here and having belong to different department, different roles, and you actually can change the status for it. For example, I have accounts about myself, Matthew HU over there, right? If I use a different account to log in, let's say if I change the status, generate a password, and copy, let me paste it in here and click OK. So if I click log out, right? If I put a Matthew, this password, you'll see I logged in as a Matthew HU, right? But it seems okay because I have a directory, I have manager, right? But if I click this icon, you will see something different. You notice instead of how like a bunch of option, right? Only have one, and this is called task schedule, right? So that's something that's, I think, that's why I think task schedule is something that's, you need to know, because no matter what type of users you are, both of you actually can have access for set this task. So let me go back to the admin. You see users permission, right? Appearance, system settings. I think if you just like read this page yourself, you pretty much can do. It's pretty self-explanatory, to be honest. I don't really see the point to going through this one by one, but these task schedule is something that I want to do with you guys. So basically, remember we were talking about this, we were set up a scenario that's like, you want to do it manually, right? So let's quickly add a task in here. So before that, so apparently, I had been added multiple tasks before, and that's the template we were using. And you actually can check the status, right? This has been showing the information about where this task had been run last time, right? And the status over there, you can delete it or whatever you want to do. So let me just quickly do an, make like tutorial, FineReport tutorial. So this is default group is like whoever gonna receive this notification, right? I can choose the platform, and I can choose admin and choose maybe myself, right? Click OK. You see these people will receive the information about this, and then click next. I will just quickly just click something. So you actually can choose, how do you want to send as object, right? You can choose the select template, and you can do the type, and can use the primary settings, etc., etc. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. Something like this. You see all these parameters, you can be resetted in here, right? Based on what kind of things you want to do, because having the parameters exist in the first place, you actually can make your report dynamic, right? So I guess that's really powerful function that you actually can send a very customized report to people. And then click next. You'll see more about like starting time, right? You can just set the frequency and the time, and you can set a condition. Let's say you want to only send this report after a certain condition is true, right? You can do this as well, and you can do task restart. Pretty clear, I think. Let's do a one. I mean, if whatever we do, I don't think it matters a lot, to be honest, just because we're actually gonna manually do it. So here, so I think the last one is the most important things. I also attached the help documentation about the email notification. So most likely, people really like to receive the email at the professional environment, right? So you actually need to set the senders, and you actually can do, set what kind of people will receive the email, right? So let's say that's my email, and then maybe set a title, hello, I don't know, just like FineReport, okay? Report. And in terms of setting the sender, right? That's something that you please check this email service, right? This documentation has all the information about how to set a sender, right? If I open these for you, I think it would be good to show. Yeah, how do you set a sender step by step, very clear. Yes. And then go to the here and click save. So you notice this task has been added successfully, right? And you'll see the status is running because we don't want to wait, right? We're just going to click this preview. This run. So in this run monitoring, you actually can see the status of this task, right? So for example, how this FineReport tutorial, right, has been run today at 4 o'clock, right? So go to this mailbox. Let's see if the email has been received or not. Yeah, it's right here, right? It has seen this Matthew email has been sent it, and yeah. So go to the PowerPoint plugin. So plugin is just something that's how we actually offer helps, I would say. So you see this plugin, you see a bunch of things has been installed. One common issue that we have to our clients is that like they have a local environment and how remote environment. Sometimes the version of the FineReport is the same, but the plugin file is not the same. So I guess that could be one of the reasons to causing some unexpected, problems. And I think, by knowing this plugin file exists in the first place, and a matchup between different server actually can causing issue is something that you need to know. And also how we have the log, right? So logs is right there. Logs is not there. Logs is right there. So by having this log information, you actually can notice what's wrong with your report tool, and you definitely will be asked, send this file to our tech support if you talk to them, especially when you guys, encounter some difficult problems. I think, at least where this file are. So this file is under application if using Mac, right? And the logs, right? So FanRuan log, that's the file I need to send. So let's move on to the final demo part. So this is a demo that's I create for this section. So I want you focus on a few components. First, these, keep moving, switching between chart, because you are actually showing exactly the same type of information about sales income, but the different type of chart you were using actually can deliver different type of information, right? Different information, different level. I think that's something that you want to see. And the reason why I didn't use combination chart on this part is because usually the line chart or the column chart, I mean, remember we're talking about combination chart is to show the data from this different perspective, right? But this one is slightly different because the x-axis is about the product itself, right? There is really no point to combine this chart and this line chart or this area chart with this bar chart, because the trend or the relation doesn't really, that it's not that clear. That's why I want to say, combination chart is not something that you always do use, but something that's you need to know when to use it, right? And something else I want to show is that remember we have one question left. It's about what's the differences between the template parameters and data set parameters, right? I want you to focus on this part, like this part. I know there's no information has been appeared because I can show you why. So if I click this, focus on two things, sorry. One thing is the space in here, and one thing is about this chart itself. So if I click in laws, right, you notice this laws has been appeared, but the information, but this area chart is not it's not changed at all, right? But if I click somewhere else, you see this area chart has been changed. So let me explain what happens right now. So by clicking this map, by allowing the parameter passing between whatever I click in here with the data source with this area chart and the column chart, that's how I make these charts are dynamic, right? Another thing is that these laws appear because the type of this information in here is belong to the data set template. It's a template data set parameters. So, and the information about these dates, right, always has been showed up is because this is a template parameters. And I will open the report for you, and I guess it will be explained better. So first things, if I click this map, right? Special effect, you notice, because I click this, oops. Let me move this in here. Special effect, because I will try to do some interaction with this chart, right? So that's why I have this primary passing, and I name where this primary missing will pass to, right? The left block 1, left block 2, left block 3, right? I'll pass the value to these things. And you want to see how do you write it? By clicking this edit, you will see whatever I click, I will change the value for this country TDP, right? Template database parameters. So if I go there, I think this is belong to right block 3 map, right? Maybe this one, because apparently I use the embedded database, right? So this. So you see this country TDB has been exists, right? Country TDB is a template dataset parameters. In the beginning, it's already equal to loss, right? But when I click the preview, you see the data has been appeared. But these loss, like the country name, didn't show up in the first place in here, but showed up in here, right? So I guess that will be explain the differences between, template parameters and the data set temp parameters. But if I click these template parameters, you'll notice there is no value for this country TDP, right? The only parameters we have is called current time TP, which is in here. So I guess for the question that's we left over is that template parameters always showed up in the screen, but for the data set template parameters, it's not showed up. But for the chart, right, you actually can do it in here, but it's just not to have it as something that you will display on the screen. So I guess hopefully this will answer the question well. Besides that, is there anything else I want to show? No, I think that'd be good. Yeah. So this will be the final chart, right? If I click this, information has been changed. If I click here, you see a hyperlink has been made because I said some about the special effect, right? Click that, also has information has been passed, right? Exactly same thing. The reason why I make this template is because I think it would be a good example for you guys to understand like today's content for sure, like parameters chart, parameters passing, and how this map is located, right? Oh yeah, forgot. This map UI, right? This is a map box, right? If I want to change to somewhere else, something else, click this map. They have satellite, right? If you change like a map box, click preview. Yeah, you see the UI has been changed, right? So I guess something, if you want to work on the map, you kind of need to know, understand what would have been covered in the second part. And I think that would be it. Yeah. Let's go to the Q&A sections. So do you guys have any questions or I don't know about the FineReport or regarding to this content? Yeah, okay, for the question. How do you make the drill down 3D map and the slice thing? Yes, we actually have documentation for it, but for the 3D map, it's something that's actually we cannot use in the FRM. It's about the FVS. So there is a different type of file map, right? There's things called FVS. So in this FVS report, it actually allows you using 3D components. But for the FRM, the one called dashboard, right? It's not something that you can actually implement the 3D components in there. And if you need documentation for it, I think I can send you to later on about like, how to insert 3D components in here. And for the drill down, right, you actually have an example already installed. So in the map in here, chart, under the map, there's the drill down map. If I yes, you actually have an example in here. So what you can do is you actually can see this. Yeah, so let me show this for you. So this is a map still loading. It's okay. So you see this data source has been provided here, right? So they kind of give you a way like, oh, what kind of information to have? You need to have a province and you have cells and a PID, right? So in this map, they kind of like tell you how do you do it by having these drill hierarchy things. So I think the best way is to actually paste this example to the template that you're actually going to working on and starting messing around. Well, the thing is, the example that we have is about like, mainland China, right? I think it would be a little bit difficult for you to understand like which one's which, but I think it would be a good example to understand like, oh, how this drill down is happening in the FineReport. And by take a look about the example that we provide about the chart section, which will be in here. So instead of get the template, right, you actually can see this map with instruction one by like step by step. So chart types, and there's a drill down map. They actually have an entire section for it, right? I think that's something that you can relate on. They actually teach you how to do it step by step. I think by going through these and understand what FineReport can do, but not a 3D level, because this is a 2D level, right? But 3D level is a different report type. And I think by going through these will give you, basic understanding about how this drill down is happening in there. Yeah, instead of just doing stuff. Yes, you don't have FAS reporting, but that's the top application. That's good point. I think you might need to, to be honest, I think for the what I can see right now is that for the later version, like let's say FineReport, like not right currently we have like FineReport 11, right? Let's say for FineReport 12, we might only have a FAS report instead. We're not gonna have like FRM report, but I think for now, the reason why you don't have this option in your desktop application is either the application you are using is in the FineReport 10, or you do need to purchase, or the team need to purchase this functionality. Yeah, I think that would be two possible reasons. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for the question though. Yeah, do you mind maybe like through the questionnaire, do you want to maybe let's book a chat appointment with me and I can show you where you can find it about FVS. So basically designer, and there's the FVS report, it's right there. So if you click OK, it will take quite long to implement, but yes. So what I'm saying right now is that you actually let's book an appointment. I actually can show you where can you find it, or I can see your screenshot to see what's going on. Yeah, it takes quite long to process it because allowing 3D module to run, it's a huge task for the PC. Yeah. Okay. Sibyl, can you send the questionnaire, which already did? Okay, that's good. So I guess if there's no question, that's okay. So that's pretty much everything that I had for you in this training. Hopefully, it will explain at least a little bit about like, how to use parameters, chart, and decision-making platform in the FineReport. And I know there are lots of information to cover, but the good thing is like FineReport has become substantially easier to use than before, I would say. So I do, yes, okay, another question, that's good. Sorry, I also face an application where the minimum required to the desk uses. Yes, I think you do need to see the less. It's something to do with like limitation with the lessons though. So let me, yeah, just please do the questionnaire and send your information in there, and maybe we can have a chat about that, about like the free lessons, or I don't know, could be free lessons or anything else about the limitation. Yeah, good. So where are we? Yeah, so I highly recommend it for you guys to just start using FineReport and messing around by checking our official website. Again, this actually will be the last section that we had about FineReport tutorials. But if you guys actually enjoy this training section or find out this is useful, please let us know in the questionnaire. And because your feedback actually will significantly influence our streaming decision. And if you want to book an appointment with sales team or me personally, just about what do you want to say to our product, please feel free to do so. And also, yes, thank you. And also, please feel free to follow us on the LinkedIn, or just add me on LinkedIn as well. So I'm Matthew, it's you, and thanks for you guys to being here, and have a wonderful day. And if you guys have any questions, please leave in the chat box, and we will close the section maybe in 5 minutes, and share the profile link. Sure, I will send you after you've done the questionnaire. Is that okay though, please? Thank you. Yeah. And yeah, see you guys next time then. Yeah, if you have any questions, just send in the chat box and we'll answer right now. Okay.